Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Music Lab podcast. My name is Dogg, and I am so excited to be back with all of you for another episode of the podcast. And today, we woke up early this morning with Athens by way of now Atlanta, Georgia, Spencer Thomas. Welcome, Spencer.
Hey, dog. Great to be here, man.
Thank you so much for joining. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, our social media pages, and and that helps us, that helps the bands that we feature. Also, don't forget to check out our sponsor, RAWR Outfitters, RAWR Outfitters.com. Don't just wear RAW. So, Spencer, you are on tour currently. You were in North Carolina last week. You have a show tonight in Montgomery, Alabama, correct? Or Birmingham?
In Birmingham, yeah. At the
Birmingham.
upstairs room at Avondale Brewery.
Excellent. So,
hmm
let's go back to March of this year. You got to
Okay.
play South by Southwest this year. Your first time doing it. We were there. You were on our radar. Unfortunately, we did not get to see you live. But talk about that experience. Talk about the city itself.
Sure. Yeah, I've always enjoyed Austin. Austin at South by, as you're familiar with, is a pretty different experience. It becomes a little more of a tourist attraction. It changes form a little bit. It becomes I don't know. I almost want to say a cosplay version, because people are like, "Oh, look, big Austin music town," and of course it is. But I think in South by, it's very played up, um, and obviously there's music at every bar and street corner and gas station you turn to. Um, so I found that really fascinating, but it was still fairly easy to get around. Um, as far as my own personal experience, I had two friends from Mississippi that live a couple houses down from each other in South Austin, and my friend Carson, who I've known for since high school, since we were in high school. So, um, yeah, that's probably 16 years or so. And my friend Reed Haney, who I've also known since high school, and they were going to be my drums and bass for the show. So I fly from the end of a Future Birds and Nude Party tour uh, from Louisville by way of Atlanta to Austin. Sleep for about 10 hours that Sunday. And then Monday and Tuesday, Reed and Carson and I go over the songs. And Wednesday, my guitar player, Lars Hefner, who plays in the band Hefner from Athens, they show up. The very first thing that we performed at was in Jam in the Van. So the first thing we performed was recorded and filmed. And um, we all met up outside of the van, and Reed said, "Hi, Lars, I'm Reed." And Reed said, and Lars said, "Hi, Reed, I'm Lars." And we got in the van and performed three songs together with them just meeting each other. So, which I think is very aligned with a lot of South by experience for people. Everyone is getting there by whatever means they can. And so, uh, I'd say that it's not unique in the fact that I was very much thrown into the experience. Um, but ironically, we really pulled off the Jam in the Van set, and it was great. Um, and so we thought, all right, boys, we got this. And we were at the Armadillo Den because that's where the Jam in the Van guys were all set up. Pauly Shore was doing his interviews out there, and And it was funny because looking at the lineup, I saw that, Shaky Graves was doing an interview, and who's the oh God, uh Shaw, what's his last name? Some David
David
Shaw,
Shaw.
maybe.
Yep, David Shaw.
Yes,
Yeah, from the
from what
Revivalists.
from the Revivalists. That's it. Yeah, David Shaw from the Revivalists, and then um I was playing, and then after that was Matt Vasquez of Delta Spirit, and then after that was Daniel Donato. And I was, first of all, I was like, why the fuck am I here? Um, Sorry, I don't know if cursing is
You're,
allowed on this
you're
podcast.
fine. You're fine.
Okay, I, I mean, really, I felt that way, and I was also nervous. So we showed up, but we thought we had it in the bag after the set in the Jam in the Van. We're like, oh, we got this. And then we went from being in this tight knit space where we could really listen and be cohesive with each other to getting on that Armadillo Den's stage, and we were all spread out. And it was just, I don't want to make it sound tragic, but in my mind, uh, from what we experienced in Jam in the Van and getting on that stage, like, from broken guitar strings to set list flying away to weird monitor mixes to being so spread out to like, it felt like a night and day difference for me personally. Maybe to other people it was fine. But I was like, I didn't want to talk to anybody after, to be honest, just, uh, and, but but I think that's also part of South by Southwest too. You jump from one thing to the next. It can feel a little rushed. I would say from a musician standpoint, it's kind of constantly a throw and go. So I I don't I don't really know if it's terribly comfortable for a lot of musicians, unless you're, playing some of these like high bar showcases. Um, you're just kind of showing up and getting in front of as many people as you can, and that's fine. That's part of the experience. And I went from doing that, playing that show in the evening, to waking up at around 6 a.m. the next day because I had to be at the ACL radio
Yes.
performance
Yes.
and play at 8 a.m. And after singing in rehearsal for the past couple of days, and then singing for those shows, I was waking up. I was driving in Reed's Subaru to the radio performance, which was at the Hotel Van Zant, and just warming up my voice, doing vocal warm ups while I was driving. The sun still wasn't up yet, um, and and I ended up pulling it off, and it was fine. But that's kind of the rushed experience. Um, going from this thing to that thing, making sure that you feel prepared and comfortable. So I mean, it was really a blur. Um, you know, I mean, personally, it was it was fun in some moments, but it it's not an experience that I would come back and say like, yes, I loved it. Absolutely, I would do it again. I feel like there'd have to be some pretty um, specific opportunities for me, um, which luckily my uh, Brady Brock, who was running my PR, was able to help me with getting some of these opportunities, like Jam in the Van, like ACL Radio. Um, that I felt like my week there was helpful for me. But other than that, I felt like it would be easy to get lost in the crowd, in the masses of all these bands and artists who make this pilgrimage to Austin for this one week,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So to comment on the Armadillo Den, we did not get there this year, but we were there last year, and I completely agree with you. That stage is massive, but what a
Mm.
cool venue.
Yeah.
Austin City. Austin City Limits Radio. We went there this year to the Hotel Van Zant. Um, we saw Lamont Landers there. Cool venue. What do you remember what the interviewer asked you?
Oh God, I can't remember. He was a great guy.
He
Um,
was, yeah,
I really
very
I
engaging.
Yeah, he's engaging. I really like talking with him. Um, I can't remember honestly.
No
I don't
worries.
know. Did you have a chance to listen to it?
Uh, is it like is it like archived?
I think so.
Okay, yeah, I will have to. Yeah, yeah. What's
Yeah.
two songs did you play then?
I played How Come Heartbreak,
Yep.
and I played because that was the more recent single that came out before South by, and then I I played Little Gold, which came out shortly after. And I was actually in Mexico when Little Gold came out. It's just giving you an idea of what my first 6 months of this year have been like.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Um, Go ahead.
yeah, let's go back to the beginning. Unless you wanted to finish a thought there.
No, that's it.
Okay, cool. So we start out in a band called Young Valley as the
hmm
drummer. And
hmm
that is in what year? 2019, 18?
2019 was about when I 2019 was when I actually departed from Young Valley, um, which ultimately disbanded. But we started we kind of started Young Valley um, really about summer over the summer of 2013 when me and uh, my friend Dylan Lovett when we were back from college. So to give you a brief synopsis, Carson, who I was talking about being the drummer for me at South by, was the bass player of Young Valley. And even further back was the bass player of this band that Zach and I started in college in like 2010 called called Dandy and the Lions. And it was kind of there was a big revival, especially that time with big surge of like Avett Brothers, Lumineers, Mumford and Sons, folk grounded instruments. Um, Zach was really taken to the banjo and has always been because he was really into a more traditional bluegrass sound. And I was playing acoustic guitar, and that's really where I learned to write songs. Zach Lovett he was he's always been a great influence to me as far as like I started writing songs when we were in the dorm room together at 18. He had been writing songs for 4 years at that point, so he already had a huge jump on me. And so when I started writing songs about nonsense, he was able to kind of correct my vision and go like, "Who is this song about? You, your persona is I in the verse, and then it's you in the chorus. What are we talking about? Like he helped me get my narrative straight. He helped me cut words out, and like I kind of learned to um, sharpen my language from those times that we were writing songs together. And so we did, but that band was Dandy and the Lions was like a college band. We made a CD. Because I mean, like, there really wasn't even a surge of vinyl at that point. There really wasn't even a lot of social media presence. I mean, I guess we were putting posters on Facebook and stuff, but it, it, it's kind of amazing how different the landscape is when we're talking about that far back. But we played. We didn't tour. We just played around college towns in Mississippi. We made it to Memphis. We made it to Jackson and Oxford and Starkville, but we didn't really. Besides that, we didn't reach that far. We we played our last show at Hey Joe's in Cleveland, Mississippi. We went to Delta State University. I should have said that. And you know, we had while it being a small town, we had a full bar that night for our last show. We had people who were singing along to all the songs, and we realized how much of an impact we made in that short amount of time. Um, And it was, and I mean, we were all teared up from and choked up from the moment, and people still talked about that. And I always looked at it and being like, it was our first band, whatever, it's just this little thing we did. But it it was amazing to realize, like, to talk to my college friends today and other friends and say, like, that was a good band, that had good songs, and to realize what we did have. So Zach and I were a good songwriting team, and we took that into Young Valley. I think Young Valley was something that maybe we were more excited to do as kind of our taste changed, as the musical landscape of you changed, because uh, I don't know, I don't want to say, you know traditional instruments like that are not a fad, but I would say that maybe the thing that we were going for at the time was a little more of a fad. I think there was a bit of a bandwagon of jumping on with you know using banjos and mandolins for songs that were not necessarily bluegrass, although we did have some of that influence. Um, so we kind of went into this alt country route, and I'd been a drummer before Young Valley, and kind of got out of touch with it in college, and so I was reacquainted with it playing in this band. Um, and so I was playing drums. Zach's twin brother Dylan was playing lead guitar, um, and Zach was playing acoustic guitar, and we all wrote songs. And so I just naturally took to the drums because I was a drummer, and he's like, "Well, what if you just sang songs and played drums?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, I've never done that before. Uh, I'll give it a shot." And so we formed this band. Carson was playing bass, and we kind of formed it over the summer of 2013. It started as playing some of Zach's solo songs and just thinking of it as a, let's play gigs over the summer and make a little cash, you know? And then it turned into a greater thing where Dylan had songs and I had songs, and we we started, even singing verses together within songs like that. And it yeah, it became just a bigger thing, which was great. And so we thought, okay, well, let's actually make a CD. We were still on CDs, like making vinyl was really just kind of coming back into place. And we our friend Byron Knight, he owned a coffee shop that's called Sneaky Beans, and a lot of bands would play out on the porch of Sneaky Beans. And I really have fond memories of those days. But he was rebuilding a studio, and we were like, "We'll help you rebuild the studio." And I'm talking, we were taking 2x4s and stuffing it with fiberglass and wrapping it with like burlap to hang on the walls as sort of makeshift sound panels. And we were actually helping him build this studio, in order to in exchange for time for us to make that first Young Valley record, which um, in November will be 10 years old. Um, it's called No Filter, which I think was something about cigarettes, because I think I was smoking Lucky Strikes or something at the time. I was watching a lot of Mad Men. And again, it was one of those things where Zach and I wrote these songs together. They had, while we weren't making like this huge jump, um, uh, at first we didn't do a lot of touring. We just were playing around town, around Jackson. But we played at Dueling Hall in Jackson the night before Thanksgiving in night before Thanksgiving, so November of 2014, and we had hundreds of people there. And it was our first like big show like that, and we were kind of in disbelief of the impact of it. Of course, we were a young band. It was our first It was our record release. So we were telling anybody we knew about it. And, putting posters up around town, there was less of a social media thing and more of a on the ground calling, texting, talking to people in the street about it. Which now I've come to realize is actually has more of an impact than you think. Uh, but it worked. And so we played this big, amazing show. And there's some video of it somewhere. There's a video of us doing, we did Graham Parsons. We did Song for You. And we had kind of a handful of our friends who played and sang on the record up, which was really cool.
That's awesome.
And, so immediately after that, we're like, well, let's go on tour. And Dylan started booking this tour where, I shit you not, we went from Seattle and back. We didn't know anything. We didn't have a market out there. We just wanted to go tour. We wanted to spread the word of Young Valley. We realized very quickly we were in over our heads. And so we had our friend Cody Cox, who lives in Jackson. He said, I might have a friend that could help y'all out. Dylan somehow had booked us some stuff down the West Coast and even like up in the Midwest. And a friend of ours in the Midwest who lived in Omaha actually helped us fill in the gaps. And so we got really lucky. We were gone for an entire month. It was the first tour we had ever been on. And I was 23 at the time. I felt like I was 28 when I got back because of just like, you experience some wins and losses on tours that last, 3 days, 4 days, a week. But we were gone for a month. So to realize like the lessons that we learned, and just so much growth. Like that's where I saw Denver for the first time. I saw Salt Lake City for the first time. I saw Seattle for the first time, LA for the first time. So all of these places for the first time in my life. And we had no idea what the fuck we were doing. We were riding around in a conversion van, like a Ford Econoline 2002 conversion van with this blue like vinyl seating and like these kind of like wood paneling. Yeah. And we just shoved everything in the back, just 4-piece band. And it was hilarious what we went through to get there. I hope I'm not going too slow, but I'm just giving you kind of a thorough explanation. But we learned a lot. We learned a lot of heartache too, for sure. Some shows we had good locals. We just kind of struck well. Mm-hmm. And others, we showed up to a bar and they didn't even know we had a band. They're like, oh, we didn't know we had a band. So we had to it was like the band is after trivia. Like we played in places like that. So we definitely got shot down. We experienced tensions with each other and, so we really learned from that. And, flash forward to touring a little smarter, but still touring a lot. We made the Young Valley record, the like Young Valley self-titled record, I would say in maybe 2000. I think it was, oh God, was it released the same year as my record? It might have been. Okay. It's released in 2019. Does your archive say that?
I don't have the info for Young Valley for when that album came out. Hanging
Okay.
Tough was June of 19.
Yeah. Young Valley might have been April of 19.
Wow.
So it took us that long to release another record. Another 5-year gap because we were just touring and we had all those songs for a while. We made an EP. We decided not to release it. People were asking, when are the new Young Valley songs happening? but we worked with Matt Patton,
Yeah.
who at the time was co-owning Dialback Sound in Water Valley, Mississippi with Bronson too.
Yep.
And uh, we worked with Bronson to make the Young Valley record. And so, there was the Dialback Sound, the bit of the Drive By Truckers connection. We'd gained a little more clout at that time. We were able to play in bigger venues. We played with Lucero, who took a liking to us. We were on the cusp of something bigger, but um, I think it was just there was something that was really coming to a head for me personally, and that was I started writing songs that were a little more personal to me that felt like I needed to play them on the acoustic guitar or the piano. Um, that I was playing drums in the band. Whenever I played song like you talk about songs like State and Downing, we tried them with Young Valley. We tried Downtown with Young Valley. Some of these songs that ended up on my first record, I had Downtown forever, and we tried some of these songs where I was playing drums, and I was like, nah, it didn't, it didn't translate, because I wasn't able to like control to play the instrument that it was written on.
Mhm.
Um, and so, that's when I decided to put some of those songs aside to make a solo record. And 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 so that's what I did. I kind of gathered these songs, and I think I was also, going through kind of a coming of age. Young Valley was we were busy and we were on the cusp of something, but life changes happen. When we were young and hungry, it was another thing. When we were in our early 20s, mid 20s, we were starting to get to our late 20s. We were starting to get to be 27, 26, 27. And I think changes were a bit upon us. Like Zach had his girlfriend Leslie just moved to Chicago, and he was kind of just going up there, and like he was like, "Hang on, I need to move to Chicago." Um, yeah, we were all just getting older, and we just decided that I I don't know. I pulled the plug just for me because I was doing a lot of booking at the time. I was handling a lot of the business affairs, and honestly, it got to be too much. I kind of wanted to live on my own timeline,
Mhm.
because I didn't really know what I wanted yet. If I knew that that was what I wanted, like to play drums in Young Valley and to like really be in that band, then I feel like I would have given it 110% and kept going. But it I didn't think that was what I wanted, and I didn't know what it was. And so and I think that the product of Hangin' Tough came from not really knowing what it was, or not really knowing what I wanted. And so I think making that solo record was kind of me knowing what I wanted without actually saying it. And So that was the product of me figuring out that something in my life needed to change, but I didn't really know what it was. Um,
How did Justin and Jimbo kind of bring that out in you for that record in particular?
mm, well, they weren't involved in the record, but
Okay.
but Jimbo was always in and out of Dialback at that time, and we were working on the record. I didn't know Jimbo well. He came in, he listened for a second. He's like, "Hey, man, that sounds good." He's like, "That sounds good. You sound really nice on the piano." And so it came around 2019. Uh, we put out the Young Valley record. We went on some tours. Um, and Jimbo said, "Hey, I'm putting out this record um, called Incinerator." And he said, "I'd really like somebody to be, play keys, but like mostly just chords, pretty little melodies, easy stuff." Because I wasn't really much of a keys player at the time. And he said, I just want some keys and some background vocals. And I said, okay. Yeah, I'll play some shows with you there. And so I got to do some playing with Jimbo, and that's where kind of the tension in Young Valley started. They're like, all right, well, if you're gonna play in other bands and play solo stuff, like, we really want to do some Young Valley stuff. And that's when it really came to a head for me, where I was like, you know what? I feel like I'm, doing a lot of the business affairs that came with the band, and it felt like more responsibility than I wanted to handle. Like I felt like I really wanted to do my solo thing, which was the thing, but and and kind of be able to wax and wane in the effort that I gave it, so that way I could take on opportunities like that, like playing with Jimbo. So I did some playing with Jimbo starting early 2019. And then I met Pete for the first time, Justin Peter Kinkle-Schuster, who we call Pete for short, one syllable instead of however many syllables that is, 8 to 10. Um, and he I sent him the record, and I loved Water Liars. I was a huge Water Liars fan. And so for him to love my record the way that he did when it first came out, I was floored. I was so excited. And so Pete called and he said, "Hey man, I love your record. I'm putting out my second solo record with Big Legal Mess, which was subsidiary label of Fat Possum." And he said, "John, this is all funny how this is happening. John Prine, not the songwriter John Prine, but the booking agent John Prine. John Prine is a booking agent still of Future Birds. John Prine was booking a tour for Pete going East Coast, Midwest to East Coast, and then out the Great West to the West Coast, and invited me to open, and we were going to play in each other's bands to kind of keep budgets tight. And so we both played bass in each other's bands, and we had a few days of rehearsal, and then we embarked on that in September of 2019. So my record came out in June. I did some duo shows with my buddy Dylan, and then with Dylan Lovett of Young Valley in the Southeast. And then I embarked on this tour with Pete starting in September. And then in between runs of that tour, I was doing tour dates with Jimbo. So it was like I went East Coast with Pete, and then I would do tour dates with Jimbo out west. And then I came back from the West Coast dates with Jimbo, and then I went back out west with Pete. And then after getting done with those West Coast dates with Pete, I did a East Coast loop with Jimbo, and then a little break in between, and then I did like a solo house show Southeast run with Pete. So I'd say from September to honestly about Christmas time, I was just road dogging of that 2019 year. That was just all I was doing, all I was focused on. And
So how
go
did that
ahead.
prepare? Yeah, how does that prepare you, or how did that prepare you back in 2019, doing an extended tour like that? Because with the Future Birds, like you're doing those tours all the time, right? Or well, not all the time, but more frequently, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely gave me my sea legs when it comes to touring. I will say one thing about Future Birds is that we're not gone. We're rarely gone for more than 2 weeks. Um, so we do, especially it's funny how like in your early 20s and your mid 20s, and like but before you really settle down, I'd say like it's easier to be gone for these longer times. But the Future Birds guys, everybody is older than me, 37. Some are approaching 38 now at this point. So they so a couple of them have kids. A couple of them are married. Some engaged to be married. So there's a little more obligation as far as them being home. So we're not really gone as much as I was at that time. Yeah, so it definitely prepared me. I will say that Future Birds is at a level now where there's a little more creature comforts. Like, we have we have hotel rooms, we have specific roommates that we stay with, a lot like green rooms are more given. So there's a little more comfort involved with doing these tours with Future Birds. Um, Not saying that it's still not, it's still, I mean, it's still hard being gone. But it's definitely, yeah, still a lot of that touring of the time definitely prepared me for being able to be gone. And it it has also propelled this this idea that the train always has to be rolling. So it's almost created this effect where I don't really know how to be still. So that's something that I've had to learn in my life more recently, is when we do have more of this time off, when we do have, a couple of weeks or so, I'm sitting at the house, I'm twiddling my thumbs. I mean, I don't really, that should be a time for rest, and I have a hard time resting, especially when I have solo work that I'm doing as well, you know. Um, so even when we have a 2 week gap between Future Bird stuff, I'm still figuring out like, oh, well, maybe I could play a couple solo shows or book some studio dates or whatever the case may be. I'm I'm finding a way to be busy,
Yeah,
you know?
I have the same problem. I think it's what makes us, and it also sometimes can break you, because
Definitely.
yeah, it's a rat race, and I think you sometimes have to realize you can be the mouse.
Yeah. Yes, that's so well put. And I think that, I was just reminiscing about when I was in Dandy and the Lions and Young Valley and like how, you know, there's the most social media we did was just like put posters up on Facebook, and ask people to share them or whatever. And now Facebook is like, don't even really recognize it anymore. It's not even something that I feel like people very actively engage with unless you're, uh, of like middle to later years. Um, and so, but there is this expectation now where it's like, okay, well, if you're going to be a musician, like you have to really engage with this social media climate, which, you know, uh, whatever, like we all have to adapt in all of our businesses. Um, but there is a part of that where, but there is this bit of this restlessness that comes with that, where I go, oh, if I'm writing a song, I should I should show a burst of it on TikTok or Instagram or whatever the case may be. I should make a reel out of it. I should make a video out of it. And so, you have to dedicate some time to that and also figure out when to relax and when to have time for yourself. Like, so I have to figure out like you know, active time off, if that makes sense. Like where my girlfriend and I, where I have to we have to pick out some vacation days or like we have to make activities out of being off and engaged with each other, just because you can sit there all day and think about the stuff that you need to be doing or should be doing because it really is it's a rat race that you feel like you always have to be on top of, but then sometimes you're just running on absolute fumes, and you don't realize how much rest you actually need before going out and doing something again. um and so, you know I love the train, I love the ride, don't get me wrong. But I also have gotten older and have understood where it eats away at me too.
Yeah, I completely agree. So let's move to 2020, the
Yeah.
pandemic, the lockdown. You decide to move to Athens, Georgia. And
Uh-huh.
for our audience that's not familiar with Athens and what it means to music in general, Athens is the hometown of maybe a band you might heard of called REM.
Mhm.
Widespread Panic, the B-52s. You know, when I say those three bands and you were living in that town, what was there an added pressure to that, or did that not really cross your mind?
Um, Not so much an added pressure, but uh, I I wanted to just explore um, a new like a music town, and I didn't. I've not really gotten a warm and fuzzy feeling about Nashville, and I've enjoyed my time in Austin, but it felt like too big of a jump for me at the time. It just was not. It felt too far. It didn't really. I mean, I had friends there, but it didn't really feel like the place for me. Um, and I had some friends in Athens, and I always just enjoyed it. Um, I mean, I was engaged with like Young Valley would go play on the rooftop of Georgia Theater, and they'd put our names on the marquee and show us endless hospitality, and we were so in love with that. We were so in love with that town and what it had to offer. Um, I loved how small it was, and I loved how rich the history of it was, and I knew that Future Birds had come from there. Um, as well as this greatness, this REM and all of that. I mean, I was even reading up on Warren Zevon books and knew that what uh, Warren had a young manager who Andy something, I'm trying to remember his name, who who was friends with all the REM guys, and that's what uh, Warren actually went down and played with the REM guys at the 40 Watt, and they were his backing band, and they they had a short period of time where they did a little album called Hindu Love Gods, um, uh, and so I was just like I was really perplexed by the history of uh, uh, of Athens and was interested, and I thought, you know what, it's a small enough town. It feels like a good place to be. It feels like a good step, and it doesn't feel too big to feel like I couldn't get a shoe in early on. And I felt like I already had some ties there with, you know, obviously Drive By Truckers being an Athens band as well. So Matt was able to hook me up with the right people. Jay Gonzalez from Drive By Truckers played on Hangin' Tough. He played organ and mellotron on a couple songs. So I already kind of had a shoe in. So I thought I might as well lean into that space.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you like to kind of give the audience kind of like a timeline. So you're in Athens. You've left Young Valley at this point.
Hmm.
You had put out the Hanging Tough record, but because of the pandemic, you couldn't tour. So what did you do during that time to kind of like stay creative musically?
Um, Man, I just just songs. I was just pumping out songs. Um,
And stocking beer.
so yeah, and stocking beer. Yeah, so I'll brief my brief pandemic period was I was in uh I was in Mississippi. I had moved back in with my folks. I'd moved out actually before I was doing all the touring with Pete and Jimbo. In August of 2019, I moved out of my spot in Jackson. I'd lived in the same apartment in Jackson for about 4 or 5 years, and moved back in with my folks because I was like, I'm going to be gone so much. Why should I pay rent? And I was also planning on moving to Athens before the whole pandemic thing. Um, so I moved home, and I was, uh, in my room. My sister's room was right across the hall, and so I was sitting in there with an acoustic guitar. I'm talking like 9 a.m., cup of coffee, guitar, notebook. In an hour, I would have something, you know, set a timer for an hour. That was the thing that kept me sane. And now I wish I could keep that kind of routine for the life of me. Um, but it's just so hard when I'm gone so much. but that's where a lot of those songs came from. I think the first song that I had for the record was "Woman Who Smokes Cigars," um, and and I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. And as I was working on those songs then, um, over the summer, I mean, we were all looking at the pandemic stuff, and I pushed my June move date to August, and and then my parents were telling me it was like by June, July, they were like, I don't know. I mean, this pandemic stuff, it's like, what if you can't really find a job or whatever? I mean, and by that time, like, for any young adult that lived on their own for a certain number of years and then moves back in with their folks, they got a way of doing things. And it's really difficult to go back and live with your parents. And so I was like, I'm getting out of here. I've saved up enough money. I'll figure it out. And so my friend, so I had a couple friends, who like uh, helped me figure out some good neighborhoods to live in. So I ended up getting an apartment in Normaltown, um, which is more like northwest of Athens. And I moved in August 6th of 2020. And same thing. The kind of thing that kept me sane was just workshopping music. In fact, like the one bedroom that I had in that apartment was not even a bedroom. I got a couch from IKEA that had a pull-out bed. I slept on the pull-out bed because I used the back room as my music space. Um, I slept on that bed for a year and used that music space in the back. Um, and that was really helpful for me. I mean, like I wrote songs like Fake Rain and Little Gold and How Come Heartbreak, Dream Lilac. I wrote the other half of those songs for the record in that space. And, I'd workshop these songs and I'd go walking around. I walk around Normaltown because like that was just the way for me to keep engaged. And then by 20, yeah, I was at this time, I started playing some drum gigs and even bass gigs with Future Birds. This was late 2020. They were playing some of these outside shows. Before vaccine was really on the way, we were just kind of playing outdoors only, private gigs, masked up besides being on stage, that sort of thing. Now granted, people get a few beers in them. That shit doesn't last very long. Um, but we did the best that we could. And because a touring band, if their only way of making money was being on tour, I mean, Future Birds did the best that they could, and they actually gained popularity during that time, which I feel like a lot of bands did not do. A lot of bands disbanded, a lot of venues closed down, and they found a way to keep it going. So I was really impressed with that. But by 2021, they already had a drummer. They weren't really taking on a keys player. That was kind of a before, it was a concept, but it wasn't something that we had actually engaged in. But beginning of 2021, I was like, savings are running dry. They're not really calling me for a lot of stuff anymore. I need money. Um, so I started working at this liquor store because I used to work in a liquor store in Jackson for people who gave me 3 weeks to a month off, no problem. Put me back on the schedule. My friends Leslie and Nate, they were really helpful with that. And so I worked at this place in Jay's in Normaltown, walking distance from where I used to live in Athens. And yeah, I was going in there and stocking the beer cooler. Um, I was listening to podcasts, listening to demos of songs, and honestly, whenever anybody was like, "Who wants to stock the beer cooler?" I was like, "Me, I'll stock the beer cooler," because engaging with people and customers, that was all fine. But like when I was in the beer cooler, I knew I could put some headphones on and I could control my own world in that little way. So I was listening to like a lot of Mark Maron interviews at the time. I was, and just even listening back to some of the demos that I had made at the house. in a way to kind of engage with uh, just like engage with my art. This was my way of keeping something going while I couldn't really go out and play shows. And then sure enough, by about March or April, the Future Birds guys called me up and said, "Hey, uh, Jeff, their former drummer, he had just quit. He was missing home, went back to California." And so I jumped in on drums. Yeah, this was March of 2021. And so I now had a gig. Um, and so I was back in playing with them. Um, and then by May of 2021, they were like, "We actually have a drummer who's going to come in and record with us for this EP that we're making with Carl from My Morning Jacket." It was called Bloomin'. And so the first Bloomin' EP, they had this guy, Tom Myers, who is the current drummer of Future Birds. And they're like, "But we know you're a multi-instrumentalist. We know you play keys. We'd love for you to come play keys." And at first I was like, "Well, I was just playing drums with y'all, and now you get this guy to come in. Why am I not playing drums in the studio?" And that was a big old fly or something that just got in front of me. But and so at first I was kind of like, "What? What's the big deal with that?" But they had me come in and play keys, and 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 I realized like that was actually a good spot for me, because playing keys with Future Birds is not an instrument they were used to having, and so I'm able to play shows with them, but I have a little more leniency for my solo music as well, and that has really been apparent during this year because I've had to miss out on just a handful of shows for solo things, and it's worked out because I was the keys player, not the drummer, a very essential, integral part of playing in a rock band. And so that, you were asking earlier about how we maintain this relationship of like, I'm a solo artist. I also play in Future Birds, and they know that. They got that. The reason they knew me at all was from the Young Valley days and from my solo record, and they knew that that was my thing when I first started playing in the band. So I think that me playing keys was something where it was an auxiliary instrument, an instrument that was encouraged for me to show up for as many shows as I could, but it wasn't a necessary instrument where if I had to miss a show, they were not shit out of luck. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're like an added
Yeah.
bonus.
Yes. I'm a bonus player in it. Yeah, as the sun is coming up, I'm seeing less of you. I'm
Oh,
trying
okay.
to. Yeah. I'm.
Rearrange. You're good.
Yeah. Cool.
Take your time.
I'm gonna
That
back
that that hot Atlanta sun.
that hot Atlanta sun. Man, we pretty much moved on about the hottest day. Um,
I believe it, brother. Yeah.
about the hottest day of the year. I mean, yeah, you know about it in Austin, Texas. Um, but I'll tell you, I went back to Mississippi in August last year, um, and it's a different kind of hot over there. It's it's better in hot Atlanta than it is in Jackson. That's the kind of heat that it'll swallow you whole, man.
It's like a Louisiana heat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we talk about the difference between dry heat and kind of humid heat, whatever. Um, Hot is hot, but the the Jackson humid heat really will, it's almost suffocating by how much moisture is in the air.
Yeah.
So I will say Athens and Atlanta is a little bit better, and we're also a little bit closer to the mountains too. So you can get a little break from the heat when you want. Um, but
So
yeah, that kind of go
why
ahead.
did we move to Atlanta then? What was it about Atlanta that was intriguing to you, and what was it that made you want to leave Athens?
Well, first of all, my partner of about 2 years is uh, lives here, and she um, she works here in town as a events coordinator at a restaurant, and we had been doing this back and forth thing for a couple of years. So first of all, that was one thing to uh, shorten the gap in our ability to see each other and to kind of ease a bit of strain in our relationship. Um, and also I had a checklist for Athens. I wanted to you know certain people that I wanted to meet. I remember Young Valley days. We were really uh excited about, like, we were thinking about like New West Records and Normal Town, and this is before Strolling Bones existed.
Okay.
Um and um and so we were talking about all these things that were going on based out of Athens and like bands that we admired. And so when I moved to Athens, I was like, I want to put out this record. I would like to engage with the Normal Town New West people, maybe see if I can get this record on one of their labels. And and then I started hearing about Strolling Bones, which is basically, for the people who don't know anything about this, um, it's kind of also an imprint label of New West. Um, Normal Town and Strolling Bones um, work under New West, with it being kind of a pet label and sort of a label that um, George Fontaine Jr. of Normal Town, George Fontaine Sr. of Strolling Bones are kind of like taking on new acts, um, bands that they believe in, or artists that they want to work with, and you know giving them opportunity to bump up to New West if it comes time for that, if there's a place for it.
Okay.
Um, and so it was around last year when I played at Athfest that I met George and Lee and Stacy of Strolling Bones, and George loved the set and said, "Hey, let's have a meeting." Um, I'm getting a little off topic, but you know, I work with them on the Joke of Life and put out the record. And I love Athens. I'm gonna miss Athens. Um, but I've loved Atlanta more as I've been able to come down here, and I've gotten to establish more relationships with Atlanta musicians, and it felt like a good time for me to move to a bigger place. Um, Also, I'm a big Braves fan. Oh, you know, I so and I also want to. I also just want to like play more um locally,
Mhm.
and I feel more comfortable playing locally. Um and Yeah, and so I wanted to do that in a bigger space like Atlanta, where it didn't feel oversaturated. And so, Athens is always right there. I can't tell you how many times I've made the drive from one to the other at this point, with Madison and I and our relationship. And also just um, with travel, I'm always driving down to the airport, um, or meeting some of the guys in Future Birds down here in Atlanta as well. So it makes traveling a little easier. Um, so I'm looking forward to seeing how this works for the ease of my travels, and also the ease of my relationship. Maybe just living with my girlfriend will make it easier for us to hang out with each other when I'm not traveling so much.
Well, and hopefully if those two things are better, hopefully that kind of helps you in your music career as well.
Mm. Yeah, I I hope so. I hope so. I mean, it like moving to Athens. that was really an experiment for me, and it really paid off. And the music scenes between the two are very incestual. I mean, there are bands that have members that are both in Atlanta and Athens. And because, in some parts of it, depends on the time of day that you're trying to do it, but you can get there in about an hour 15, an hour and a half. On some hard days, it can take about 2 hours, depending on, what you're trying to do. But so I mean, there's a reason that these ties are so closely knit. And I plan on making and recording more music in Athens.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So of all of the people that you worked with for this album, as you said about Jay, Carl, the guys from Hefner, Future Birds, I in particular, because I am such a huge My Morning Jacket fan, I want to talk about your relationship with Carl and talk about him as a person and as a musician.
Yeah. First of all, I mean, I got My Morning Jacket's Z from Barnes and Noble in probably 2007 or 8, whenever the record came out.
2005. Yep.
2005. Yeah. So I got it in like 2007. And burn through that CD. And I think that was actually the first record that Carl was on. Flash forward to about 2000, I guess it was 2018. 2018, this is when I was really starting to play solo shows. And Carl had just put out his third solo record, Wished Out. And it was playing at Dueling Hall with a 3-piece band, including Tom Blankenship, who is the bass player of My Morning Jacket.
Yeah.
And so my friend Alex, who was working at Dueling Hall at the time, he was like, "Hey, do you want the opening slot?" I said, "Of course. I would love to play and open for Carl." And so I met Carl then. There's an old picture of me and Carl that I'll send you at some point. I used to have long hair. I had a mustache that went down like this. I had like a handlebar mustache. But so it's hilarious to pull that picture up, because then we meet again in the studio with Future Birds. Then we continue our relationship because Future Birds does Bloomin' 2 with Carl at the beginning of, I guess it was 2022.
Okay.
And we established this relationship with Carl. And I mean, the other guys had already kind of established a relationship with him, but I established more of one with him. And, to the point where I didn't feel afraid to ask him if he'd play on the record. And it's funny, you're like, people are like, why would you not ask Carl to play guitar? Because Carl is, arguably one of the greats who is out there doing it right now on the guitar. And I don't know. Lars was doing a perfectly good job playing guitar on the record. I didn't need him on that. I just thought it'd be fun if Carl played saxophone on the record, because Carl is an excellent sax player. And I think that if you weren't the kind of My Morning Jacket fan that went to a lot of the live shows, a lot of people wouldn't really know that. So it's like, Carl, do you want to play saxophone on a couple of tracks? And Carl's really sweet about it. He was like, gave me a fair price and was really like, this is really just if you want to or not. I just put this straight into gear. So sorry, I just got a text message saying that the show in Birmingham tonight is canceled for AC issues. This just happened to us in Charlotte at the Visualite.
Are you serious?
I'm serious.
Oh, that's crushing.
I'm serious, dude. I just got it. Yeah. So anyway.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, hey man,
we got all day.
Honestly, I could use the rest. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, whatever, man.
Yeah.
Um, so,
Global warming.
but yeah, whew, yeah, yeah, I know, man. Yeah, same with the Visualite. Golly. Yeah, but yeah, so um, we've kind of been doing this thing now more with Carl birds, where we've had we would open with a Carl set and everybody and we all back him up, and then Carl would play on the Future Bird set. And we would play, we would sprinkle in some of the songs that Carl wrote with on the Future Birds Bloomin' EP. So Carl has a couple of great songs, Blue Eyed Girl, Mont Eagle. Those are on the Bloomin' EPs. And then we played some songs from um his other albums, like we play a song called Fourth of July, we play Wished Out, we play Sleepy Lagoon, um Don't Get Carried Away or Carried Away. And then we'd also play some like ripping covers. We play with him, we play Hurricane, we play Neil Young. We
Yeah.
play we play uh Little Feat's Willin', we play Mary
Yeah.
Jane's Last Dance. Uh just we play Walk On. Neil's Walk On with
Oh,
Carl too,
okay.
which is super fun. And I mean, I was thinking about we did this show at Brooklyn Bowl, and when we played the Carl set, um, man, and just being able to hear all of that, what was going on in the ears, and not to mention everybody in our band tightens up just this much whenever what we call Uncle Carl is around. You know, nobody wants to fuck up while Uncle Carl is around, so everybody just gets that much tighter.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, man, this is, I feel like we're like Dead and Company or something right now. There's just something so like, I just felt like we were moving as a unit, and it feels so good. And so like, I've just really been happy to get to know Carl on this time. And, we'll walk from one restaurant to the other, like from the venue, and be able to really talk with each other. And it's just been really nice to get to know him as a person, because
Mhm.
I think as I've moved up in my musical world, it's been really nice to just get to know people that I've looked up to on a more personal level, and you
Mhm.
just realize they're just people who have been doing it longer than you have, you
Mhm.
know, and that's what is really amazing to me, because I get to talk with somebody like Carl, who is like, I'm 32 years old, and Carl just turned 50 this year.
Yeah.
Um, so uh, I'm just thinking about that 18-year difference. I'm like, imagine how much I can grow in 18 years. And so really, it's just like you just keep doing it.
Mhm.
You just keep going. And that's really what it's taught me more than anything, with these people with all this experience. You can look around and get jealous of people who have seemed to get a jump over you out of nowhere.
Mhm.
But this can also be this at any given day.
Yeah.
But this, you know, you're not,
They
you're
can't
not,
take that away. Yeah.
they can't take that away from me.
Correct.
You
Yeah.
know, they won't take away from me making records. You can't disappoint me at this point. Like, you can't disappoint me with a thinned out crowd, or a last minute canceled show because of AC issues. It's like, that's what you really have to learn in this industry, is just being flexible. And the people who are famous by this willed existence, like the Future Birds. I mean, I would say example A are the people that I play in a band with. They're 15 years deep,
Yeah.
and it feels like people are finally fucking paying attention. You know, they got some early on press with Hampton's Lullaby in 2011, and like in their very early years, they got some good clout,
Mm-hmm.
but then they kind of had to work through a lower part of their career,
Yeah.
and they came out on top. And I'm proud of them for that. I admire them for that. I admire them for the fact that they're able to understand and work through each other's relationships, what everyone's strengths are. And, it's really just like you just don't let what happens on the other side get you down, because at the end of the day, like you're going to do this anyway. So like keep writing songs, keep putting out music, keep playing shows because it will turn out better in the long run if you are the last artist band standing, you just
Yeah.
last longer. So, and I think that's it because some people will get disappointed by how hard they crashed from this first spike, and then might want to go do something else, or they do it when they're really young, and then like maybe settling down catches up with them and they decide to do something else, or um so it really is, man. It's like it always is and always will be the long game on the ground, meeting people in person. Yes, there are people finding some early success when it comes to social media, and that's not lost on me. Like people can tap into that
Mhm.
success, but it's how long are you willing to put up with it and keep it, you know?
Yeah. I want to talk about a quote that you said because kind of getting into life stuff right now, so I think it's appropriate.
Yeah.
You said in an interview, and I think this is when we talked about this earlier. You said, I learned to take the magnifying glass off myself, and I found the humor and profundity in daily existence. And you were talking about this new record compared to the first record. So speak on that a little bit and explain to the audience.
Yeah. Um, I said something in short, like I learned to laugh instead of cry. And I mean, and there's some huge truth to that. In the Young Valley years, in my early solo years, there was a lot I was taking very, very seriously. Um, I was pretty wound up tight. I was pretty ego driven. There was a lot of stuff that I had not worked worked out through myself. And I mean, I would say that I could speak on behalf of a lot of people when it came to the pandemic and the world slowing down enough. Um, when I really had to unpack my things because I couldn't be gone the way that I was, there was a lot of emotional unpacking that came with that. So you know, when I was at home, when I was uh, in Athens in the apartment by myself, I mean, like, this is the first time I ever lived by myself was when I was in Athens during the pandemic, so I got a lot of time alone. And man, that kind of time alone, nothing really pulls you inside out and makes you take an honest look at yourself. Um, and I really took to therapy. I really engaged and learned about myself in a way that I didn't quite understand before. I mean, and I would say even in early times when I was playing with Future Birds, I just I was really afraid of fitting in. You know, I I I had to learn to be more comfortable with myself and the way that I wanted to be in this world. Um, because I feel like I was always kind of riding with whoever was willing to lead. And kind of, I think doing my solo work was the way that I was able to teach myself how I wanted to live my own life and engage with the world around me. And so I learned a lot from that experience.
Mhm.
And I think that uh, I, I still kind of had some residual letting go of that through making the Joke of Life. Um, and I mean, and honestly, the where I'm headed is is the way that I've really gotten to be in touch with that part of me. Like I found that I feel a little more excited. I'm more excited about songs that kind of have a bit of a wink and a nudge to them, than songs that have this profound sadness that I, that I was dealing with in my earlier record. You know, I wrote about depression because that's where I was. I was depressed.
Mm.
Um, and I was, I, I wrote differently in 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 Joke of Life because I was learning more about myself, and now I feel like I'm more excited about songs that are stories outside of myself. Like I'm, you know, me, sad, sad, sad is so that way of songwriting. While I can love it and while that can still be beautiful, uh, in the right approach, to me right now feels very boring. And so I feel more excited with songs that are stories, songs that can make you kind of make you kind of chuckle and ask questions at the same time. Um, that's something that I really loved about Warren Zevon. He really took it to that place, you know,
Yeah.
um, that that can make you really think about the human existence, but also make you laugh about it too. You know, like he said, his one of his quotes with David Letterman in some of his one of his last interviews was, you know, enjoy every sandwich. He could have said something so sad and profound, but he was like, just enjoy every sandwich.
That's a
And
great line. Can't go
I
wrong with a
love it.
sandwich.
There's nothing wrong with a good sandwich. Hey, you know, and I
So,
love that, man.
what do
Yeah.
you, when I tell you, so, well, not when I tell you, so when you put out the first album and compared to this album, a lot of
Uh-huh.
artists and bands will tell you or have told me, and I'm sure in conversations with artists, you've heard this before, up until you put out a song or up until you put out an album, those songs in that album are yours. But once you put it out into the world, it's everyone else's. When you put out the first album compared to this album, what does that mean to you when I say that? And how did it mean to you when you released each album?
Oh man, when I put out the first record, it was like all the, yeah, you know, it was just all the best songs that I had. Like all the, it's basically all every song that I had. You know, that at that point, you're just kind of like scraping what you have together, and putting that out was, I thought I was making my real first big stamp on the world. You know, it was the same way we were with Young Valley when we put out our first record, but it's just like, you know, first name, last name, songwriter, they come a dime a dozen, you know. Um, how you differentiate yourself is in a live setting. Um, once people meet you and see you, they understand. Um, but you know, they see press about you. It's like you kind of don't really give a shit. I mean, to be honest, you know, it's like how many first name, last name songwriters have you just scrolled by and like, you know, new articles about somebody or somebody signed to this label or whatever. It's like you don't, there has to be enough buzz around you in order for anybody to even take the time to listen to you. So like I think at first I was just hoping for more and got disappointed. And this time around I'm hoping for less and knowing that it's just something I got to build on, you know?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Um, knowing that it's always going to be something that I have to build on. You know, this is my first label experience. This is my first experience with like what I would consider a very excellent PR campaign. Brody Brock is the vice president of PR at New West, and he loved the Joke of Life so much that he wanted to take on the campaign. I was so pleased with that. And Brody did, I'm sorry, Brady, he did such, Brady Brock is his name. Brady did such a great job with the PR campaign. I mean, like, I couldn't imagine it going better. Um, it's just like, you can't really gauge it until you're out in front of people and in the world. And in fact, like, even up to playing in Atlanta and Athens, like, I don't really have much of a following in Atlanta. I haven't played a lot in Atlanta, but I think I just expected more from people that I knew. So the first album release show was at the Earl, and I couldn't like promote on the ground because I didn't live here and I was gone a lot. And I didn't really have a lot of people there at the Earl. And when I saw what I knew the room was actually going to look like, I kind of had to go walk down the street and sit at the bench down the road, because I was kind of having to level with my expectations. But I had to remember, like, this is something you build. This is something that you build. And I know what it's going to look like because I got a taste of that when I was at the Georgia Theater. Probably had about 100 people there for my album release, which for the Georgia Theater is not a lot. I understand that. But the band that I had on stage, the way the song sounded, the way the performance was, I know I'm like, that's where we're going with it. Mm-hmm. And once I get in spaces like that with an audience that's receptive to it, like if I, play for good opening shows, whether it be with Future Birds or anybody else, when I get in with an audience with that kind of sound backing me up and playing these songs the way that they're meant to be heard, I know that people will love it. I know that the people that want to hear this kind of music will love it. I just got to get there. And so I'm not looking at numbers. I'm not trying to look at this engagement anymore because that really only leads to disappointment and the feeling of like I always have to do more. I'm just trying to do as much as I can.
And control what you can control, right?
Control what I can control and also just like enjoy my life in this experience. Look, I'll tell you, over this past weekend, Jordan Reynolds of Rose Hotel and we formed a band with her drummer, Jared Pepper, my friend Ben Hackett, formerly of New Madrid, and many other bands in Athens, plays bass with me. And my friend Tyler Key, who also plays in a number of bands in Athens, also a great solo artist as well. He's playing guitar. We were a 5-piece band. We were touring together, playing a Rose Hotel set, playing a Spencer Thomas set, and we went through North Carolina this past weekend. And we played in Asheville with our friends Holler Choir. We stayed at their house and went back to the rougher days of touring. I blew up a mattress pad, I blew up a camper pad, stuck it in a sleeping bag, borrowed a pillow, and slept on the concrete floor of our friend's basement.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you, like, and instead of making it feel like this is a step down for me, I had so much fun. We had so much fun this weekend. And I stopped looking at who was there. I stopped thinking about how many people were there and just engaged and was thankful for the people that were, and I feel like if I can just hone in on that perspective and get ready to make some more music, and I don't want a 3-year turnaround. I'm moving quicker this time because I want to just, I know what I want to write now. And I'm more excited. I'm just more excited in building this thing And it's funny because I've noticed, especially like playing these past handful of Future Bird show, because it's been about a month since the record has come out, a month and a day since The Joke of Life has come out.
Yeah.
So many people have come up to me from the Future Birds fan base and have been really engaged with the record. I'm like, look, it's already happening, you know? Um, and I don't need to be, I don't need to be so hard on myself for it. So I'm really just trying to come at this with a lighter heart, and in song and in perspective of how this whole thing works. Because look, like, you can talk to anybody who's a touring musician right now. I mean, like, you're talking about uh, you know, two or three corporations owning almost all the venues in the United States. You're talking about um, Ticketmaster. You're talking about merch cuts coming from the artist. You're talking about streamings giving you a tenth of a penny, per stream. Whatever, 700 streams equals a cup of coffee or something like that. There's so many things working against us. I I would hate to let that push me down and make me stop. I
That
would
is
hate to.
Yeah,
What?
that's the true. I feel like in this country, that is the true tragedy of all of this, of all
Hmm.
of the bands and artists who had a record that was going to be great or a song that was going to be epic that never had a chance because of finances. Like, finances should never be like the detriment to you fulfilling your dream, and especially in
Hmm.
music, like
Hmm.
it is. It's a real, like, hard pill to swallow.
Hmm.
So yeah, I completely agree with you.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, I actually just recently, I don't know how well you can see, I can't really tell. It's kind of healing up, but I got these boxing gloves because this is for hanging tough.
Yeah.
And we talked about, obviously, hanging tough, New Kids on the Block. I told you before we started this interview, I missed the window on that. I was born in 91, tail end of 91 too. So it was just like, like, I grew up knowing, like, NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys and things like that. So it was like New Kids on the Block was just on the cusp before my time. And I didn't know anything about it, but the reason I called it Hanging Tough um, was not only because of the song, the title track,
Mhm.
but because you know, for me at that time, it was through my mental health and through my depression and through, like, working through the ailments that were just going on in my own head, and it was just about hanging in there. And so I just got these boxing gloves recently. Finally, it's been the first time I've gotten a tattoo in quite a while. But that was supposed to be for that record, which is now 5 years old as of the 14th of this month. It's now Hanging Tough is now 5 years old, um, and really, it's really just about hanging in there. And I that's that's what I would say for anybody, who is maybe not as far along as me, maybe is further along than me and just getting discouraged. You know, I hear about people almost quitting, and then something happens, and you really never know what is going to. Um, I am lucky with the circumstances that I even have thus far. I'm so glad that George has taken the chance and rolled the dice on me. And George Senior and I, we've become great friends. Um, and he's like, "Let's do this again." And I'm amazed and I'm grateful for the experience that we're going to put out another record together. And I'm just going to keep going. because he knows he's done this with so many bands. He knows the build that it takes. And I'm just here for the ride. So I'm, whether that means like one day I'm just going to go completely solo, or my career is going to be me putting out my solo records, playing with Future Birds, and then people who are like the real Future Birds fans go, but have you heard Spencer's solo records? Like what, the living, how I make my living is I'm trying not to focus on like what is actually going to make my living, but I'm like, how am I going to make the best art out of this situation, and what's going to make me happier? And that's the way that I'm going to try to engage with this world and this industry from now on, because man, in the US, there's so many strikes against us. Um, People talk about touring in Europe, and you never want to tour the States again once you tour Europe. I hear that. I don't have direct experience from it, um, but I know that in European countries, they're just far more helpful when it comes to musicians. Um, and I would love for that to be the same over here, but we just, I thought maybe we were going to get there during the pandemic when people started realizing how much they miss live music.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, we got some great people out there. We really do. I can't tell you how many familiar faces I see at Future Bird shows. And those same people buy my shirts and my records. But as far as how it functions in a bigger industry, there's some bad apples there at the top that we got to work through, you know. But I don't want that to infiltrate the way that I make music.
You just got to play the game, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Unfortunately, but find your own voice through it. Like don't jump into a trend. People can sniff out uh you not being genuine. Um, so it's just like, how are you going to engage with this ever changing industry, and how are you going to make it your own?
And stay relevant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
make it your own and make it your own and stay relevant. Um, Unfortunately,
So,
I mean, I feel. Oh, go ahead.
yeah,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
No, you're fine. I want to talk about somebody who really outside of South by was the connector for both of us, and that's Drew.
Uh-huh.
What
Yeah.
what has Drew meant for you with your career? I know you talked about with Strolling Bones and everything, but what has Drew done, and how is your relationship with him, and how has that grown?
Oh, I mean, Drew is the connector for Strolling Bones. Um, he has done such a great job. Uh, I mean, he was one of my first friends when I moved into town. Because I realized we had met before at the Georgia Theater when Young Valley played on the rooftop. But now we became friends, and he was almost my manager before before we even made the claim that he was my manager. Um, and he's always been like, yeah, don't pay me when I play in your band. He's like, we're good. Like we're like he knows he he's the one who's made me think every year like it's about the long game, you know, and making me choose not to engage with um kind of having these more disastrous or like existential thoughts. He's like, it's the long game. We got to keep doing this. We got to like just like keep up with this. And so he's been quite a rock when it comes to that. And he also urged George and Lee and Strolling Bones team to be out at the show when we played at Athfest for that very first. Uh, I got some buzzing around my ears, but we for that very first for the I mean, I would say like more cohesive full band show that I played in Athens. Um, and George was like, "Let's have a meeting." Drew was there every step of the way, making sure that we engaged with our lawyer, got everything square, and has really helped out going forward. Um, he's just been a rock and somebody that I can talk to and like how we move this thing forward. Um, and Yeah, he's been a great connector, and he's also like he's also very good at a perfectly crafted email. You know, he knows how to uh, find the line of business and personal. He knows how to be um, grateful and complimentary, and also asking for things that we would like or need. He's found the right line of establishing friendships and business relationships. Um, I think Drew does a good job in that, and so I'm happy to call him a friend, a cheerleader, a manager, um, and also the connector of you and me.
Yeah. So, what can the audience, your fans, expect outside of tour dates for this month? Anything for the rest of the year? Any new music? Any tour dates with Future Birds that you can share with?
Tour dates with Future Birds are heavy. August 9th, the album Easy Company comes out, which uh, we Future Birds we recorded with Brad Cook um, out at Sonic Ranch, just south of El Paso, um, in Tornillo, Texas. Um, and So that'll be out August 9th. So for Future Birds news specifically, from there we'll be going to the Ryman, to Red Rocks, to the Northeast, some Midwest, some we'll be in July, we'll be in North Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, places like that with Shaky Graves, as well as doing our own Future Birds headline shows. Yeah, I will be uh pretty busy with that. So, this has kind of been my tour for this year. I mean, like coming up, uh I'll be playing some more shows with Jordan from Rose Hotel. Um and I'll be working on doing some more solo stuff as well for the rest of the year. But and I also am planning on getting back into the studio again in August because I just don't want to wait that damn long.
Mhm.
You know, I want
Yeah.
to start. I want to just record some songs and just see what the picture is starting to look like. Because I think once I lay some songs down and start hearing what is sonically happening, it helps me inform what the rest of the record should be like. So I'm ready to get moving, and I'm going to work with my friend Nate Nelson, who mixed The Joke of Life. He works at Tweed. He also helped mix She Doesn't Know She Does It, which is a standalone single. Um, and So I'm just looking forward to engaging in taking this record to people and making more songs. Um, Tired of waiting, you know?
Well, it's a fantastic record. You should be so proud of it.
Thank you.
Fair to say too that it might even be in my top five albums of the year right now. So it's
Thank
fantastic.
you.
Yeah, man.
Thank you.
Well done,
Yeah.
well done. And it's been a pleasure to talk to you. I
Yeah.
just hope the best for you, and wish nothing but the best for you. So thank you so much, Spencer.
Yeah. Thank you, buddy. I
Anything
appreciate it.
else you want to share with your fans or the audience before we head out?
Um, yeah, I mean, well, we talked about this song earlier before we started the interview, but listen to Fake Rain. That's probably my favorite song on the record. Um, and It's kind of a sleeper on as far as engagement goes from what I can see. in Apple Music and Spotify. It's a little less in the rotation, but I think that that's one of my favorite songs that I've written. Um, and also Woman Who Smokes Cigars. Um, and I just I think if you just want to hear something that sounds classic, but you know for a fact is new, I think that you should really hear The Joke of Life. It is something that I spent a lot of time and money working on, as as we've talked about, and I'm really excited to share it with the world. And it really does mean a lot, as little as it feels like the online stuff can do, but following and engaging in social media platforms and in streaming platforms, as as little as they might give back to us in some ways, looking at you, Spotify, um, it it does help drive it to more people. So if you will, just tell a friend. If you really love this record, please show somebody, show 3 people, show 5 people. Because when I love a record, when I love something new, I'm showing everybody.
Have you listened to that Kings Leon new album yet?
No, I haven't yet.
Speaking of, it is fantastic. It's some of their best work that they've done. Like it's so good.
Cool,
Yeah,
cool.
definitely check that out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I feel like they're on the same tip too. They're like, what is it called? Can we have fun?
yeah. Yeah. Can
Yeah.
we just have fun? Yeah.
Can we just have fun? That's
Yeah.
I think we're I think I'm looking for my "Can We Just Have Fun" record. So I maybe I could listen to it and find some inspiration there.
Yeah. That sounds good, brother. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for doing this again. Ladies and gentlemen, again, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe to our YouTube channel, our social media pages. That helps us. That helps the bands and artists like Spencer that we feature. Also, check out our sponsor, RAR Outfitters, RAWR, outfitters.com. Don't just wear RAR. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, I've been Dogg. You've been great. This is the Music Lab podcast.